Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah, and my pronouns are they, them. And I am an academic learning specialist at the Studio for Teaching and Learning, and I focus primarily on Microsoft products. So today we're going to talk a little bit about using alternative text in Microsoft Office and just go through what is alternative text, how to use it, and how to add alternative text to your images using Microsoft products. So I would like to begin by acknowledging that St. Mary's University is in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, which were first signed in 1726. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. So now I'm going to hand it over to Jen Green, and she is going to talk a little bit about what alternative text is.
Sure. So again, my name is Jen Green. I'm the manager of student accessibility here at SMU. The Fred Smithers Center and the studio have been working together and trying to increase collaborations because, when we talk about the scope of accessibility, we realize that it's not just the physical campus that we're looking at, but it's also very much the virtual campus that we're looking at. And if, COVID has shown us anything, it's that we need to be focused on digital accessibility more so than ever before. So today, the goal is to talk a little bit about alternative text because it's one of the simplest things you can do to increase accessibility. And we all know the importance of visuals and how they help the student engage with the material and make a connection. But that's not necessarily, it doesn't always happen for people who have vision loss or who are blind. So alternative text really gives us an opportunity to make what we're doing completely enabling, and we essentially, when we include alternative text, we turn it into an enabling environment. And alternative text in itself, you can describe it, and Sarah's going to get into, how do we incorporate this and how do we apply it and how do we practically do it. But you can share it orally during lessons or public speaking. You can actually explain the pictures, and it's great because it's an added bonus for learning. It makes it more clear. You're definitely more articulate, but you're also building relationships at the same time. Like, going that extra mile really makes a huge difference for so many students. So I will let Sarah take over now.
Great, thank you, Jen. So Jennifer Webb is now going to talk a little bit about the context regarding alternative text.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Webb, and I'm with the Studio for Teaching and Learning. The context for alt text is everything. Alternative text for an image may change based on the context. So you have to ask yourself, why are you including the image or the non-textual element in there? Is it decorative? Is it a link? Is it a collection of pictures that you need to look at? And I'm going to get Sarah to move to the next slide just to kind of look at this in a context. So the context can change for the same image. So this image of the campus could be used just as a decorative piece, and all you have to do, if it's being used decoratively, you just click the little box. If it is a link, then it's really important that you say it's a link and it's linking to. If you're talking about the history of the campus, then that element should be brought in. If you're trying to describe where buildings are, so you can see where the same image can be used really differently for different reasons, and that's the really important part of what we need to include in the alt text. I'll get Sarah to advance that to the next slide. So there's some do's and don'ts. You want to be succinct and try and keep it to 150 characters or less. You want to communicate the function or the context, which we've just mentioned, and take into account the surrounding text. So if you are describing what's going on in the paragraphs, then you can probably, mark it as decorative if it's being described well or you're describing it orally. The other piece is the do nots. You do not need to include image of or graphic of, and you shouldn't be using the file name as the alt text. And I will pass it over to Sarah.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. And I will just note on that file name, a lot of the time, if alternative text is automatically generated, sometimes it automatically uses the file name. So it's always good to check and make sure if alt text is being auto-generated, that it's not just taking the file name and using that. Something important that we always like to talk about when we're talking about images is copyright. So any images that you use in your course are governed by Canadian copyright law. So if you're unsure about whether or not the image that you're using needs to have special attention paid to it for copyright, you can ask the Copyright Office at the Patrick Power Library. I've put their email address in the chat. When you upload an image into Brightspace, you do receive a reminder about that. So just make sure that you're familiar with that reminder as well. But for now, we are going to talk a little bit about using alt text in Microsoft products. So across most Microsoft platforms, things like Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and OneNote, you're going to find the place for alternative text in the exact same spot. That button is always in the same spot. It's in the ribbon under picture format. So I will show you what that looks like when we are in Microsoft Word. So here in Word, there are a few different ways that I can add alternative text to an image. Obviously, the first thing I'm going to need to do is to add an image. So to do that, I can go into Insert, Pictures, and I'm going to select an image that I have on my device. And add that image in there. So when I have the image selected, you'll notice along the top ribbon that there is a new tab here when I have the image selected, picture format. This tab isn't going to show up unless I have the image selected. So when I click outside of the image, you can see it disappears, but when I click back on the image, it reappears. And this is where we're going to find our button for alternative text. So if we click here on picture format, right here, nice and big, alt text. So all we need to do is click on that button here, and the alt text pane will open on the right-hand side of our software. And I can see here that Microsoft Word has actually automatically generated a description for me. Sometimes it will do that depending on the image, and it has chosen a person sitting at a table. Great, that's exactly what this image is. So I can see that it generated this description with low confidence. I will delete that part of it. And maybe I want to be a little bit more specific because this person is using a laptop. So I can say using a laptop, and that describes the image. So then I can close out of the alt text image pane. And if I go back to it, that will still be there. Another way you can add alt text to an image in Microsoft Word, other than clicking on the picture format tab, is by right-clicking and selecting Edit Alt Text. So there are a few different ways you can open it up depending on your preference. Similarly, in PowerPoint, you can add alt text to your images. So once I have my presentation open, I figure out where I'd like my image to be. And maybe in this case, I would like to use an icon instead of an image. So PowerPoint has icons built in. I can click on icon and I can look through the options that are selected here. Maybe I will choose this apple. I can click insert. And here, because this is considered a graphics and not a photo, I open up the graphics format tab and I can see alt text here. So I can click on the alt text, and because it is a preloaded image in Microsoft, Apple Outline showed up right there ready for me already. If I wanted to add anything there, I could as well. And it works the exact same way as it does in Microsoft Word. Very easy. In Excel, same thing. You can add your image by insert, pictures, and I'll add that same image from before. Picture format, alt text. And this time it didn't generate the description for me, so I can type it in. And I can also edit it by right-clicking as well. Jennifer Webb, if you could open up the PowerPoint presentation again, that would be great.
I will do that.
Thank you. Does
Or
anyone have
try.
any does anyone have any questions about where to find alt text in any of that software?
Sarah, I have a question.
Mhm.
Well, it's more a request. I was wondering if you'd demonstrate how to insert a photo into an Excel file.
Yeah, for sure.
Once again, I just wasn't sure if you got it into a cell or whether or not it just sort of commanded its own space.
Absolutely.
Thank
Let's take
you.
a look at that.
Sorry
Yeah,
to
no
interrupt.
problem. No, no worries. So I'm just going to take over again briefly, Jennifer. Apologies.
No worries.
So in this case, when I inserted the image, it did not insert into the cell, it just inserted into the spreadsheet. So if I wanted to insert directly into a cell, I can select the cell and I can either paste an image directly in. So if I had something in my clipboard, copy, doesn't want to let me paste, that is okay. You know, to be honest, this is a new version of Excel for me, so I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't want to take up too much time
Yeah, I did.
with the image.
Yeah, no problem at all.
But yeah,
Thanks.
I'll get back to you on that. Does anyone else have any questions about the alternative text in Word, PowerPoint, or Excel? Awesome.
Sorry, I just have a really quick comment.
Mhm.
Don't, when we're putting words and we're describing the pictures,
Mhm.
Don't hesitate to put detail in there, like, describing the color of a person's skin or what they're wearing, because, just as, at the beginning of the presentation, Sarah gave their pronouns, and that's becoming a practice that's, becoming more popular. We're also doing that from an accessibility point of view, where we'll often start group discussions by saying what we look like. And that just gives the person who is blind or has vision loss more of a connection, and they're more included into the conversation when they have an idea of what we might look like. We don't often realize how big of an impact that actually makes when building connection and attending something.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you so much, Jen, for adding that.
Sarah, can you see the presentation? Okay, you've got it.
Yeah. So just going into that picture format, and like Jen said, maybe being a little bit more detailed than I was in my descriptions, describe the color of the shirt, describe the color of the person's skin, describe what they look like, describe what their hair looks like. And you can access all of that from the alt text tab in all of that software, or by right clicking. So here are the sources that we used in this presentation. I recommend that if you haven't read, especially the W3 image concepts, it's a really useful guide for making your content more accessible. And also, if you would like any more additional resources, there are some links here available as well. And you can always reach out to any of us at the studio or the Fred Smithers Center for more information about making your content more accessible.
Sarah?
Mhm.
Is there a link to the studio?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. I just wanted to check. I tried to get a hold of it today and couldn't find it, but I didn't look.
Are you looking for
Here,
an email address or a website?
I suppose a website.
Great.
Yeah, the website, absolutely. The email address I get from the website. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
I also added links to the 3 resources that were mentioned previously into the chat as well.
Oh, fantastic.
Great. Well, thank you everyone so much for attending, and look forward to some future sessions from us about different ways that you can make your digital content more accessible to more students. And if there are any other questions, we will be here hanging around for a couple minutes.